Emergency lights flickered like dying stars across the ceiling of St. Catherine's Hospital. The sound came first, not a roar, but a whisper that grew into something hungry. Water. Nurse Evelyn Harper gripped the railing as the flood surged past her ankles, climbing fast. The speakers hissed before the voice came. Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. She'd heard that before. Hurricane Rita. The levee breaks. She knew the difference between a warning and a death sentence. Behind her, young orderly Marcus slipped and vanished beneath the rising dark. Sparks flared where a power cart met the water, painting chaos in blue light. Keep moving, Evelyn shouted. Her voice was hoarse but unshakable. Follow the lights. The water reached her waist, dragging debris, clipboards, coffee cups, a forgotten jacket. Things that had been ordinary 12 minutes ago when the world still made sense. 3 months ago, they told her she was too old, too slow. Tonight, experience was the only thing that mattered. Her fingers found Marcus's collar. She hauled him up, drenched and gasping. Move, she ordered. Not a plea, a command. When the hospital went under, she didn't sink. She led. Because some storms still know who's worth following. Have you ever met someone who refused to step back, who stood firm when everyone else ran? Share your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories of courage and quiet strength.
That morning began like any other Tuesday, predictable, safe. The kind of boring that only hospitals know, steady until it's not. Evelyn Harper arrived at 5:30 sharp, rain jacket dripping, hair tucked under the same scrub cap she'd worn for years. Her locker was still stuck on the bottom hinge. She still kicked it in the same spot to make it close. Routine had become a muscle memory, and she found comfort in the repetition. In the lounge, Kelly Ramos was already on her third cup of coffee, 26, bright-eyed, brilliant with an Ivy line but still learning that medicine was 10% knowledge and 90% endurance. Careful, Evelyn, Kelly teased. Emergency drills this afternoon. Don't want you twisting a hip during the fake evacuation. The room laughed fondly, but with that soft edge that separates admiration from pity. Evelyn only smiled. She'd learned long ago how to let jokes slide off like rain on a windshield. She checked her supply cart twice. Bandages, syringes, trauma shears, all in place. She'd worked through hurricanes, blackouts, and an earthquake that cracked the foundation and sent everyone running. She knew chaos. She knew how to move through it like water. Around 11, Dr. Mason Sharma found her in the supply room. 34, kind, a little too careful with his words. Evelyn, he began, you've earned your rest. 42 years, most people don't give that much to anything. She set her clipboard down. Rest is overrated, Dr. Sharma. People still need care, and I still know how to give it. The first warning came at 2 o'clock. Sirens, low, drawn out, mournful, rose through the hospital halls, vibrating in the glass. Not the monthly tests, the real ones. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the monitors seemed to pause between beeps. An hour later, rain came hard and sudden, hammering the windows until the world outside turned to watercolor. The sky had gone bruised dark, the kind of green-gray that meant something was breaking loose above the clouds. Thunder followed, rolling over the city like an engine that wouldn't shut off. Lightning flickered through the corridors, catching on metal rails and ivy poles, turning every flash into a camera shutter of fear. Somewhere down the hall, someone muttered, "It's coming fast." By 4, the parking lot had vanished beneath swirling, muddy water. Cars drifted, bumping softly against one another like forgotten boats. The backup generators rumbled to life. a hollow, unsteady sound that made no one feel safer. Then came the silence before impact, the brief, breath-held stillness that happened right before the world changes shape. A thin trickle of water slid under the emergency doors, silver and deliberate, spreading across the tile. And within seconds, it was more than a trickle. That's when St. Catherine's stopped feeling permanent and started to sink. The hospital's lower floors disappears in less than 10 minutes. That's the thing most people don't understand about flash floods. They don't creep. They don't warn. They arrive like a freight train made of water, unstoppable and deafening. The basement went first. Archives, maintenance, the old cafeteria no one used anymore. Then the ground floor, radiology, the gift shop, and the historic main entrance tourists love to photograph. All of it vanished beneath water, the color of frost and earth, churning with debris and memory. The backup generators rumbled to life with a mechanical groan. Relief lasted all of 5 seconds before they sputtered once, then died. The lights blinked out, plunging half the hospital into a suffocating liquid dark. That's when panic found its voice. The evacuation alarm shrieked, high-pitched, repetitive, unrelenting. It wasn't just a noise, it was chaos in sound form, drilling to every mind. The protocol said to move patients up and out, but up where? Out how? The elevators were death traps now. The stairwells had become waterfalls. Kelly Ramos stood frozen in the third-floor hallway, the water already creeping over her shoes. Around her, patients cried out. Nurses shouted orders that overlapped. Radios crackled with broken transmissions. Doctors argued into phones that had long stopped connecting. "Who goes first?" Kelly yelled into the confusion. Her voice trembled. "The ICU? The ER? Maternity? Someone tell me who goes first." No one answered. No one could. Dr. Mason Sharma appeared, phone pressed to his ear, soaked to the elbows. He shouted over the alarm. "They're saying stay put. Rescue boats are coming." "The water's still rising," someone screamed back. "Then they're saying evacuate." "Evacuate to where?" The words ricocheted off the walls, overlapping until they stopped being language and became a raw sound. Fear has a sound. It's not screaming. It's 100 voices trying to solve a problem that doesn't have a solution. And through it all, Evelyn Harper stood still, her mind cutting through the noise like a scalpel. "You!" Her voice cracked like a whip. She pointed at Kelly. "Stop thinking, start moving. Get every blanket from the linen closet, every single one." Kelly blinked, startled. "But now." Something in Evelyn's tone, that unshakable certainty forged in 4 decades of crisis, snapped Kelly out of paralysis. She ran. Evelyn turned to a young resident. "Halt! Anyone on oxygen moves first. Check every room. If you hear a gurgle in the vents, that floor's next to flood. Get them out before it does." Holt didn't hesitate. He sprinkled down the hall, calling out names. Evelyn faced Mason next. "Dr. Sharma, stop listening to people who aren't here. You're here. Decide." Mason froze, phone still in his hand. Then, slowly, the fog lifted from his eyes. He nodded once, the look of a man reclaiming control. And then the building screamed. Metal tore. Concrete cracked. The floor heaved beneath them as the elevator shaft gave way with a roar that shook the walls. A burst of air and dust exploded through the corridor, followed by the sound of water surging downward into the new void. Someone screamed, "They're trapped!" They were. The lower wing had collapsed. The cries echoed, faint, distorted, and were swallowed by the roar of rising water. For a split second, Evelyn's breath caught, then training took over. She shut her eyes and forced her mind to move faster than the panic around her. She pictured the hospital like a map, every hallway, every maintenance route, every forgotten corridor. She'd memorized the blueprints back in 2007 when they reinforced the south wing and sealed off the old tunnels beneath the parking garage. The maintenance tunnels, half submerged now, probably unstable, dangerous as hell. But they led somewhere the flood hadn't reached yet, the old nurse's dormitory, now used for storage. It might still be above water. It might still be their only chance. She ripped the fire safety map from the wall and laid it flat against the counter, tracing the route with a wet finger. The edges of the paper bled ink where the water touched it, but she could still see it, the line, the path. "We can't wait for rescue," Mason said, his voice breaking. "We're not," Evelyn replied. He looked at her, startled. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there's another way out." She met his eyes, calm and steady. Through the tunnels, Kelly returned, arms full of soaked blankets, shivering. Holt stumbled in behind her, dragging a patient's oxygen tank through the rising water. Evelyn took one last look down the hall. The lights were flickering, the alarm still blaring, the water now lapping at her knees. "This building's not going to hold," she said quietly. "Move." They hesitated, just for a moment, then followed her. Evelyn Harper led them towards the maintenance wing, map in hand, water churning at her heels, and behind her, St. Catherine's groaned and shuddered, the sound of a dying giant. She didn't look back. There wasn't time, because when the wall starts to break, someone has to remember where the exits used to be. The corridor behind the industrial laundry room smelled of bleach, steam, and fear. Pipes rattled overhead, dripping condensation that mingled with the flood water surging at their knees. Evelyn Ramos had only been down here twice in 40 years, once during orientation, and once when she'd gotten spectacularly lost looking for a physical therapy. Now, she stood at the rusted access door to the maintenance tunnels, the emergency keyring trembling in her wet hands. The water was climbing fast, thigh deep, tugging at her legs with a steady, merciless pull. Behind her, chaos was trying to organize itself into purpose. Kelly and Dr. Mason had managed to load 6 patients onto gurneys, turning them into makeshift rafts. 4 nurses and 2 orderlies steadied them, including Marcus, coughing, soaked, but refusing to stop. Kelly's voice trembled. "This is insane." "Probably," Evelyn said, sliding the key home. "But insanity's all we've got left." The lock clicked. When the door opened, the tunnel exhaled darkness, thick and solid, like a living thing. The smell hit first, mildew, metal, something old and wet. Evelyn switched on her flashlight. A heavy metal one, the kind that doubled as a weapon. The beam sliced through the black, catching slick concrete walls, hanging cables, and a thin white fog that hovered above the water. The flood inside was chest deep and moving, not still. It pulsed with the current, water searching for exits, for weaknesses, for prey. Evelyn turned to the others. "We stay together. You lose sight of the person in front of you and you call out immediately. Nobody dies alone." Dr. Mason's jaw tightened. Evelyn, if this tunnel floods, then we drown together instead of drowning apart. She waded in. Come on. The cold hit like a fist. Not water, but ice, glacier runoff, sharp enough to steal breath. Callie gasped behind her. One of the patients whimpered softly. Evelyn ignored her own shaking limbs and pushed forward, one deliberate step at a time. The beam of her flashlight trembled against the surface, throwing reflections that danced and broke like ghosts. Floating debris brushed past her, cafeteria trays, IV tubing, a framed staff photo that flipped face down in the current. Gallie's voice cracked. We're not going to make it. We'll drown down here. Not if we keep moving, Evelyn said, her tone like gravel and certainty. The tunnel bent left, then right. Pipes overhead groaned with pressure. Somewhere far away, the building's bones were breaking. The sound of doors giving out, foundations shifting. Evelyn keeps the rhythm in her head, left at the junction, straight past the old boiler, right where the pipes ran low. Her mind drew the map she hadn't seen in 20 years, memory guiding where sight failed. 50 feet in, the water reached her neck. It pushed harder now, a living force trying to knock her off balance. Behind her, the gurneys buckled and twisted. Marcus grunted as he held one steady. We're losing them. Hold on, Evelyn shouted, pushing forward. She needed to believe they were close. Almost there. It was a lie. But sometimes leadership meant lying in the right direction. Then her flashlight caught something ahead. A wall of wreckage, metal shelving, broken pipes, and collapsed plaster. A debris dam, jammed floor to ceiling. Dr. Mason saw it and froze. Oh God, no, 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 no. Panic has a pitch. Once it starts, it spreads. One voice, then another, until everyone's speaking fear instead of words. Evelyn grabbed his arm hard enough to hurt. Stop. We're trapped, he choked. You're going to stop talking and use that medical degree for something useful. She shoved the crowbar into his hands. She'd taken it from the maintenance closet because she'd known they might need it. Use your shoulders, not your fear. For a moment, his eyes searched hers, wild, lost, then steadied. He waded forward and jammed the crowbar into the metal mass. Steel screamed against steel. Steel screamed against steel. The blockage shifted, but didn't break. Again, Evelyn said, her voice flat and commanding. She moved beside him, bracing both feet, gripping a twisted pipe. The water was at her chin now. She could taste metal, dirt, and adrenaline. If it rose another 6 inches, they'd all be swimming, with patience in the dark. Mason heaved again. The debris groaned. A small gap tore open, maybe 2 feet wide. Kelly's voice came sharp and panicked. That's not enough, it's not. A pipe burst overhead. The sound was a gunshot. Water gushed in with brutal force, knocking Evelyn backward. She went under. The cold erased everything. Sound, direction, thought. Darkness folded around her. Her lungs burned as she clawed at nothing. For a heartbeat, she didn't know which way was up. Then she felt it. The current. It always flows somewhere. She followed it. Her head broke the surface with a violent gasp. She coughed up water and blinked through the dark. Kelly was screaming her name. Mason was shouting orders. Someone was praying. Evelyn wiped her face, blinking hard. Then she saw it through the torn hole in the debris. Light, not bright, not holy, just moonlight, fractured and trembling through the flood. But it was enough. There, she gasped. The exit, we can reach it. Evelyn braced her shoulders against the debris pile, the cold metal biting into her soaked scrubs. She wasn't a large woman, 5'4" in a good day, 120 soaking wet, which she currently was, but she'd spent 4 decades lifting patients twice her size. She knew leverage. She knew stubbornness. The metal groaned beneath her weight, shifted, gave way. The gap widened to 3 feet, then 4. Go, she shouted, voice raw but steady. Get them through. Marcus and Holt moved first, guiding the makeshift gurney rafts one by one through the opening. The patient, a frail man with pneumonia who'd been silent for hours, disappeared through the gap, water lapping at his sides. Then, the second gurney, the third. Behind them, Callie's hands trembled so bad she could barely steer. This is insane, she whispered. Probably, Evelyn said, breathless. Keep moving. Callie pushed through, followed by the others. Dr. Mason lingered, bracing himself against the shifting debris to hold it open. His chest heaved. His eyes darted towards the ceiling as another tremor shook the tunnel. Go, Evelyn told him. Not without. That's an order, Doctor. Their eyes locked. In that single look, every condescending comment about her age, every polite suggestion that she transitioned gracefully into retirement, every whisper of obsolescence, gone. What remained was mutual respect, raw and unspoken. Mason hesitated only a second longer, then nodded and slipped through. Evelyn followed last. The moment she cleared the opening, the debris behind her gave way in a thunderous collapse that shook the tunnel walls. Dust and water surged forward in a wave that nearly took her off her feet. But ahead, light. Not bright, not holy, just a faint trembling glow, fractured across the water's surface. The tunnel widened into an old underground parking garage, half submerged and echoing with the soft lapping of flood water. And through the broken gate at the far end, she saw it. Sky. The first hint of dawn, that fragile pink that only comes after a storm has spent itself. They'd made it. For the first time in hours, Evelyn noticed her own heartbeat. Slow, heavy, human. She waded forward, pushing the last gurney up the ramp. Water streamed off her arms. Her legs trembled, each step a small rebellion against exhaustion. Her lungs burned with cold, but she kept going. Kelly stumbled beside her, sobbing with every breath. Not in despair now, but relief, the kind that shakes loose from deep in the chest, after the body finally believes it's going to live. Dr. Mason was already on the ramp above, shouting to the rescue crews waiting beyond the fence. Helicopters circled overhead, their blades chopping the dawn air. Floodlights scanned the water, finding them. Here, we have survivors. The echo bounced off the concrete walls like an answered prayer. Evelyn pushed the gurney until the wheels caught dry ground. The patient coughed weakly, alive. She almost laughed. Callie collapsed onto the wet concrete, face in her hand, shaking. Evelyn sank to one knee beside her, catching her breath. Her entire body felt like a single bruised heartbeat. Dr. Mason turned toward her, his face streaked with dirt and disbelief. He stared like he was seeing her for the first time. Maybe he was, maybe they all were. A helicopter landed 50 yards away, sending wind and rain swirling. Rescue crews poured out, firefighters, EMTs, people in hazmat suits, their voice sharp and urgent. Someone wrapped a blanket around Evelyn's shoulders, tucking it close. A young firefighter, who couldn't have been more than 25, crouched down beside her. His helmet was crooked, his eyes were wide. "Ma'am, how did you get them all out?" Evelyn managed a faint smile. Her throat ached. Her voice came out rough as gravel. "Old routes," she said. "Old instincts." He blinked, half smiling in awe. "Well, ma'am, it worked." Around them, the parking lot had become a temporary field hospitals. Stretchers, IV poles, blankets, controlled chaos. The kind Evelyn had lived her entire life inside. Someone tried to guide her towards a stretcher, but she waved them off. "I'm fine, take care of them first." Dr. Mason appeared again, holding a bottle of water. He twisted the cap off and handed it to her without a word. Evelyn took it. The water was warm, metallic, the best thing she'd ever tasted. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded. "You saved them, Evelyn. You saved us." She looked at him. "We saved each other." For a moment he didn't respond, just exhaled. The fear that had lived behind his eyes since the first alarm was gone now. Something steadier had taken its place. They worked in silence after that. The sky kept brightening. More rescue teams arrived, boats, trucks, and helicopters. People were emerging from other exits, other wings. The building was wounded, but not lost. Someone set up a triage tent on the high ground. Evelyn sat on a fold-out chair, the blanket still draped around her shoulders. She watched the motion around her, the rhythm of crisis and care. It felt familiar, it felt like home. An hour passed before Dr. Mason returned. His scrubs were still damp, his hands were caught and shaking, but his voice was steady. "I told you you'd earned your rest," he said softly. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Maybe after breakfast." He laughed. Quiet, tired, real. Down the hill, a news van was setting up. A reporter with perfect hair pointed straight at Evelyn. The cameraman nodded, adjusting his lens. The story was obvious. An elderly nurse leads flood rescue. Evelyn stood before they could reach her and shook her head. "Save the spotlight for the one still inside," she said. The reporter hesitated, then lowered the microphone. Kelly appeared with 2 steaming paper cups from the rescue truck. "Coffee," she said. "Sort of." It was terrible coffee. Burnt, bitter, barely warm. But Evelyn accepted it anyway. Her hands shook as she brought it to her lips. "Thank you," Kelly said after a long silence. Just 2 words, but they cracked in the middle. Evelyn squeezed her shoulder. "You did well tonight." "I froze," Kelly whispered. "And then you didn't," Evelyn said. "That's what matters." They sat together in the rising light, saying nothing more. The sun climbed, gliding the flood water, turning the wrecked world soft again. In the distance, St. Catherine still stood, scarred, half drowned but standing. Buildings can be repaired, Evelyn thought, always. It's people who break and people who heal. As the rescue crews began transferring patients to waiting ambulances, Evelyn finally let herself sit back. Someone had left a clean set of scrubs and supply crate nearby. She reached for them, smiling faintly when she saw the tag, size small. She slipped the top over her shoulders. It fit. 6 weeks later, St. Catherine's reopened, not fully. The lower floors were still being renovated, still smelled like industrial fans and fresh paint, but the upper floors were operational. Patients were being readmitted. Life was returning. In the staff lounge, Kelly Ramos was conducting an emergency preparedness training. 12 nurses sat around tables, taking notes. On the whiteboard behind Kelly, she'd written, Harper Protocol, Tunnel Evacuation Routes. She was using Evelyn's handwritten notes, the same ones Evelyn had drafted during her sleepless nights after the flood, mapping every maintenance tunnel, every emergency exit, every route that the official blueprints had forgotten. Kelly had laminated them, made copies, submitted them to hospital administration as new standard operating procedure. They'd been approved. In the main hallway, someone had hung a photo. It wasn't large, just an 8 by 10 in a simple frame, but it was positioned where everyone could see it, where it couldn't be missed. Evelyn Harper, 42 years of service. Below it, smaller text. When others ran, she stayed. Evelyn herself had tried to have it removed. Twice. Administration had politely refused. The third time she'd complained. The hospital director had smiled and said, Consider it a permanent fixture like you. The dedication ceremony happened on a Saturday morning, too early. In Evelyn's opinion, she tried not to attend, but Kelly had physically dragged her from the parking lot. The cafeteria was packed. Nurses, doctors, administrators, even patients who'd been there that night. The man with pneumonia, now breathing easily, stood in the front row with his wife. Dr. Mason Sharma spoke. He'd written his speech on index cards but kept forgetting to look at them. Experience isn't just about time, he said. It's about paying attention during that time. It's about learning from every shift, every patient, every crisis. Evelyn Harper paid attention for 42 years. He paused. She didn't outrun the storm, she outlasted it, and she taught the rest of us how. Applause filled the room. Evelyn sat in the back, coffee cup in hand, face carefully neutral, but her eyes were bright. Afterward, people wanted to talk to her, thank her, shake her hand. She accepted it with the same quiet grace she'd shown that night in the tunnels. No drama, no grand speeches, just a nod and a small smile. Kelly caught her before she could escape. You're a terrible celebrity, Kelly said. Good thing I'm a nurse then. You know what I mean. Kelly's voice softened. You changed how we see things, how we see each other, how we see ourselves. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that, so she just squeezed Kelly's hand. That evening, as Evelyn left the hospital for the day, rain began to fall, gentle this time, soft, the kind of rain that washes things clean without tearing them apart. She stood in the parking lot for a moment, face tilted up, letting the water touch her skin. In the windows above, she could see the hospital lights, steady, reliable, alive. Tomorrow, there will be more patients, more emergencies, more crises, both large and small. The work never ended, but that was okay. She'd never wanted it to end. She walked towards her car. The same beat-up sedan she'd driven for 15 years. She started the engine, turned on wipers. And as she pulled out of the parking lot, a young orderly she'd never met before waved at her from the entrance. Not because he recognized her, just because that's what you do when you see a colleague leaving at the end of a shift. Evelyn waved back. When the next storm comes, they won't look at her age, they'll look for her. Everyday heroes are all around us.